Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight we're gonna hit the road, so I hope you're ready, because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. At the time of this story, my family and I lived in Northeast Ohio. Most of our extended family on my father's side lived in Central Florida. So for the Christmas holidays, we would go and spend time with my grandparents and aunts and uncles. At the time I was 6 years old, my brother Russ was 4, and my brother Chase was 2, and my brother Braden was 4 months. The trip down to Florida was uneventful. We did not come across any car wrecks or anything of interest. It was a very long drive though, especially with a 4-month-old baby. We drove in a red minivan that was loaded down to clothes and toys. You can imagine all the toys that we bought to celebrate our Christmas, along with what our grandparents were going to give us. Christmas with my grandparents was fantastic. We had aunts and uncles and lots of cousins. We ate, talked, and played. There were tons of toys and new outfits. When the time came to go home, we had twice as much as what we came with. My mum had to put our clothes in trash bags and pack them underneath the seats and on the floorboards of the van. When we climbed in, we were walking on top of our toys and clothes, and we didn't mind it much being kids. We started our long trip back. After we went north for a while, and were in a different state, my dad realized that we were losing gas incredibly fast. We had to stop several times to fill up. And that's when my dad decided to stop at a mechanic's. We had spent all of our extra money in Florida, and my parents had not planned on having to stop to get the van serviced. It was kind of neat and kind of annoying at the same time to be stuck in this mechanic shop, not having the money for a hotel or even a motel. So we spent the night in the car, while it was up in the lift that the mechanics worked underneath it. Loud, noisy, and not smelling very good. After lots of money and being stuck in a mechanic shop for a while, my dad decided that enough was enough and we were going to leave. A lot of improvements had been made to the van, but the main problem was not fixed. Back on the road, we finally made it to the Smoky Mountains. It was beautiful considering that it was Christmas time, and there was pristine snow on both sides of the highway. It was very early morning, and we had just woken up. We were in pajamas and odds and ends of clothing. My brother Chase was wearing his coat and a pair of sweatpants. Ross only wore a pair of sweatpants, and I had a pair of corduroy pants, socks, and a t-shirt. My mum had opened the bag of M&Ms that had been sitting between her and my dad while they were driving down the road, periodically handing us back handfuls of bright candy. I had climbed up to the middle seat where my brother's car seat was, slid in, while he went to the back to sit with Russ. Since I was in the middle, I had to give candy to my 2 younger brothers. It was odd because the candy coating was melting, leaving yellow and green smears all over my hands. It was the 80s and we weren't wearing seatbelts. My mum had just finished feeding Braden and set him back in the car seat, not bothering to buckle him up either. It's important to note that my brother Chase did not talk a lot. In fact, he only spoke when he really wanted to, which was quite rare. And this made all of the situation so much more shocking. We were rolling along in relative silence when my brother Chase yelled out, "Fire!" Everyone in the car quickly turned to see the orange and yellow flames in the back window. My mother quickly turned to my dad and quietly said, "Kevin, we're on fire." My dad started tapping the brakes to slow down, turned on his turn signal and tried to get us out of the right lane to the left lane so that we could stop. He looked at my mum, and I remember him saying in a hushed voice, "No brakes." At this point, other cars had begun to slow down with us and had started to honk on their horns to get our attention to let us know we were on fire. My dad continued into the left lane and nudged the guardrail, which startled us all. He was using it to help us slow down, since our brakes had long since burnt off and were probably laying in the middle of the highway somewhere. We had slowed down some, but were not slowing down enough. In my mum's mind, she saw us all perishing. She made a decision that to this day still shocks me. She opened her car door and leapt out. All of a sudden my mum was gone. I couldn't see her, and then the sliding door opened with a fierce crack. It promptly fell off and hit the road. My mum, being the superwoman that she was, leapt over the top of the door and continued to run alongside the van. The woman was running next to a moving, flaming vehicle. As we slowed down, the flames had become much higher. Now they were starting to encircle the van. They had slowly crept up from the back window around to the sides where the sliding door was, and were almost at the front doors. My mum was faced with a wall of fire between her and her children. She later told us that she couldn't see much through the flames. What she did see were the bright colors of Chase's coat. She reached through the flames and grabbed my little brother and pulled him out. She then threw him on the side of the road. He bumped and skidded along the soft shoulder of gravel. And a few moments later my dad was able to get the car stopped by bumping the guardrail. And now that my mum's door was shut because of the guardrail and the wall of fire that I saw out the sliding door, I had no way out. My dad threw open his door, and I saw my chance. I grabbed his broad shoulders and hung on for dear life. As he jumped out the van, he inadvertently dragged me along with him, pulling me over his seat. Boy, was I lucky. When he ran around to the side of the van, I slid off of him. I looked for my mum and saw her running down the mountain. I climbed over the guardrail and began to run to her and yell for her, and she turned and yelled at me to run. I started down the steep hill of the mountain. It was freezing. The snow had dug one of my socks off my foot. I stopped to look for my sock, and that is when I saw my mum saw me and yell again for me to keep running. She stopped and waited for me. When I got to her, she grabbed me and continued to run as fast as she could. I was cold, but she said it didn't matter. Little did I know that my dad had gone in to rescue my two other brothers. When he reached the side of the van where the sliding door had been, he was met with the same thing my mum was, a wall of fire. He knew that Braden's car seat was just beyond the flames. He reached out and grabbed my infant brother as the fire engulfed his car seat. My brother Russ had made it from the back seat to the middle and then to the front seats, and my dad told him to jump as the flames overtook the van. Turning to make his escape and jump over the guardrail, my dad reached behind for my brother. To his surprise and horror, my brother wasn't there. He turned and saw my brother still standing between the two front seats, so he did what any dad would. He reached through the fire once again and grabbed my brother by the back of his sweatpants. He yanked him out, threw him over the shoulder, quickly turning and putting one leg over the guardrail to make a dash for safety. The van exploded. The force knocked my dad over the rail and put him and my two brothers in the snow. He was able to keep hold of his sons and run. The van proceeded to explode twice more. As my mum and me went further down the mountain, she was able to see what was happening. When we eventually heard the boom, she shielded mine and my brother's tiny frames with her body. Eventually, we all met up on the side of the road. There was a nice older lady waiting for us with a blanket. She took me, Russ, and Chase and put us in her car with the heat on full blast. When the door shut, Russ turned to us and said, "Look." He opened his hands and had showed us a melted mess of green, yellow, and orange candy. They'd melted. Fire trucks and ambulances showed up. My mum was trying to hush Braden, but the heat had been so intense that it had dried up her milk and she couldn't feed him. The firemen gave us coloring books and oxygen. At the hospital, we were all examined. I only had a small scratch from the snow. Russ was treated for smoke inhalation. His blonde hair was now so matted and an orange color from the heat and flames. My dad had no hair on either arm and no eyebrows and was treated for smoke inhalation also. My mum's arm was hairless. Her milk was dry, but she was fine. Chase had some road rash from my mum getting him out of the way. Poor Braden, he had it the worst. While my dad had been trying to get him out, there must have been a flame or some hot metal that he touched. He had been burnt so badly 30 years on, fortunately, he has no scars or any lasting damage. We really should have all perished. There are a lot of ifs or buts, but the important thing is, we're alive. My parents are heroes. They saved not one, but 4 kids under the age of 7. They literally went through fire for us, risked life and limb, and that is pure love. That is family. The cause of the fire was a dime-sized hole in the gas tank. The mechanics had fixed everything but that. 30 years later, I'm still afraid to get into any red minivans. I live in New Orleans, and years ago my brother wanted to adopt a dog from a small rural town about 2 hours away. It was an easy enough drive, but we got close to the town of Clinton, and I started noticing a ton of police driving around. No sirens, nobody speeding by, but I think I probably saw 15 to 20 patrol cars in the span of about 10 minutes. We get to the house, meet the foster mum and the dog, who is the sweetest thing in the world, and decide to adopt her and head home about 2 hours later. Everything seems fine. Tally, the dog, climbs up in the front seat while I'm driving and falls asleep, leaving my brother to sit in the back by himself, which was hilarious. We keep driving and notice that there are even more cops driving around, but still no sirens. They're just everywhere though. As we're leaving Clinton, maybe about 3 miles or so to the exit, I notice this old white sedan coming flying up on our rear, flashing their lights and honking. I didn't really think about it, but I figured maybe these people were hurt or needed something. It definitely wasn't a cop car, but it was unusual for sure. I started to pull over to the shoulder, and they pulled over as well, about 10 to 15 yards behind us when they stopped. I stopped the car, and when I turned around, I looked at my brother. For some reason, as soon as our eyes met, the hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I realized there was something very wrong about this. I hesitated, wanting to see if someone needed help, but as soon as the door of the car behind us opened, a voice in my head said to get the hell out of there. I peeled out, sped for the exit, making sure nobody had followed us, and we got back to New Orleans safe and sound. But the entire time I was watching for that car to ensure they didn't follow. I never learned what happened with all the police cars or the white sedan, but something was really wrong. I should have listened to my gut way sooner. Stopping even temporarily was really stupid of me. I hypothesize that there was some kind of raid or something, and the cops were looking for someone as we were driving through. The white sedan was trying to get us to pull over so they could carjack us and dodge the cops further. I don't know though, and I hope that it was someone innocent that needed help and I just bailed. But I don't know. I have a pretty strong feeling, as does my brother, that there was something funky going on. I recently started a job in a factory on swing shift, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. I'm only 2 weeks in, but I can say right now that I do not feel safe there. I'm already an unimposing trans guy in a small conservative town, and I'm at the point where it's difficult to be stealthy, aka easy, obvious target. I also made the mistake of telling everyone that I used my preferred name but didn't correct them on calling me she or her. I figured that correcting them on pronouns would make it even more obvious that I do not belong. Last night was my second night completely on my own. My first week was training on day shift. I got in the car and headed home around 2:15. It was an hour commute, and right before I got on the highway, a truck got right up on my bumper and stayed there until I got into a well-lit part of the next city. If I changed lanes, so did he. He kept his brights on the whole time, and he disappeared for a bit, and I hoped that he was just being an arse and that was that. I made my way across the city without incident, until I turned off onto the scenic route home from there. This guy comes up quickly behind me out of nowhere, until he's right up on my bumper again. Same deal as earlier. Right behind, blinding me. I was definitely panicking at this point because no one else is on the road, and I know I'm the only one at work that lives in this town. He follows me for another 5 miles or so, then suddenly decides to make a sharp U-turn and book it out of there. I drove home as calmly as I could, drove around the police station a bit before finally going home. They didn't follow me the whole way. They must have gotten impatient after that half hour. I couldn't sleep at all, and I do not feel safe going to work after that. I've tried calling human resources, but no one answered the phone. I don't have anyone else's number at work, and at that late at night our small town police stations aren't even open. Anyone with advice, it would be greatly appreciated. Back in college, I took a road trip from Philadelphia to Washington. I was driving through the Midwest, but I can't remember where exactly. I drove through the US multiple times, and I can't remember if this happened on the upper or lower routes I'd taken. If I had to guess, I'd bet that it was Wyoming. It was late at night on an empty road. I was cruising at a decent speed, my car was working fine, and I had adequate snacks and water, and I was just jamming out to some CDs. Life was good, when I suddenly got an overwhelming feeling of something weird happening around me. I couldn't see anything besides the road. There were no mountains visible, the sky was overcast, and the only thing in existence seemed to be me and what was illuminated by my headlights. It was then that I saw another car. The only car I'd seen for a few hours, which stood out due to that it was a pickup truck with lots of rust around the back, and it had one of those cabin things on the bed, the covers with the windows, I don't know what they're called, that looked half busted with duct tape all over the window part. I hadn't seen it prior, and would have known it was driving in front of me too, and there were no connecting roads, so it must have come in from either the grass or off the shoulder where it had been parked. Anyway, I'm still cruising, but it was weird. I remember being frustrated because the guy in front of me was slowly reducing his speed, and thus mine. I considered passing him, but it was only 2 lanes and I didn't really want to do it in the dark, so whatever. It hit ahead when I noticed that in front of us there was a tiny forest all around the road. It stretched on for maybe 300 yards, and half of that away from the road, but covered it on both sides. The guy in front of me kept slowing down, but when we approached this point, he really started slowing down, almost like he intended to stop. This was not good. I suddenly passed him and sped up like a bat out of hell, putting everything in my trusty Crown Vic into action. I saw out the mirror that the truck ended up stopping and pulling off to the side completely, as I'm flooring it and thinking I must be paranoid, and the guy might need help. I see a van/truck, one of those big box types, parked in the trees off the road, and some shadows of people walking in front of it. I wasn't going to stop anyway, but that kept me from even thinking about the idea. Woke me right the hell up. Occasionally I do wonder what the hell they were up to. During a road trip from New Jersey to North Carolina, my friend and I decided we were hungry and went looking for food in a town in Maryland. I don't really remember the name of the town, but it felt very strange as soon as we pulled onto the main road, as there didn't seem to be any people out and about. It was the middle of the day, but no one was walking around. There weren't any restaurant food options other than the pizza place, so we pulled up and parked in front of it. It seemed like everyone in the town must have gone to the pizza place, and when we parked the car, everyone in the restaurant turns and looks at our car through the big glass windows. Like at the same time they stared at us, we stared at them. It felt so weird that I said, I don't want to go in there. My friend just nodded at me wide-eyed and we drove to another town for lunch. Why was seemingly the whole town in that pizza place? What was with the staring? I'm almost a little sorry we didn't go in and find out, but at the same time not sorry at all. I used to really enjoy driving around at night, especially because round where I live there are lots of country roads and they were fun to zip around. One evening after I'd been at a friend's house, I decided to drive to my church, about a half hour away from home, and back just listening to music. The route is one I've done most Sundays for 17 years being driven, and I have been driving it for about 4 years at this point, so even in the dark I felt fine to drive the speed limit, which is 60. I got maybe a quarter of a mile there, and my stomach started twisting. I knew that if I kept on going I regretted, but I shook it off. It wasn't late and the weather was fine. I wasn't going to miss this driving opportunity. But as I got further, the feeling in my stomach got worse, and I realized I had to turn around. Just before I reached the hill pass that's about halfway to the church, I pulled a U-turn and went home, and stopped feeling so anxious and forgot about it. The next day, I woke up and got in my car to go to church to find my usual route had been closed. Turned out that on the hill pass, the road had crumbled away, leaving a sheer drop that would have been around a blind bend for me. The road issue had been called in by a driver going the opposite direction to me about 5 minutes after I had pulled a U-turn and driven away. I'd definitely have been, at the very least, badly hurt had I kept on going. It was about 1:45 p.m. in Houston, Texas. I was driving to my job as a nanny about 15 minutes away from my house. Currently, I was less than a minute away from my house, in my car waiting at a red light. The light turned green, and I accelerated as you do. Well, I was reaching the end of the intersection and a car from the cross lane of traffic ran his red light and darted in front of me. So quickly, I didn't have any time to brake at all. I hit him going at roughly 15 to 20, and immediately he got out his car and gestured for me to unlock my passenger side door, which I did because I was frazzled, having just gotten into a car accident. He immediately opened his door and started spinning a tale. "Listen, I'm an off-duty police officer chasing a suspect. Didn't you see me?" "No," I said, because he hadn't been chasing anyone. Traffic was slow since we were in a residential area and no other cars had decided to run a red light. "Didn't you see my lights?" "No," because he didn't have any lights. He was in an older model SUV or minivan, not a police car. Keep in mind, he also wasn't in any sort of uniform, just a blue shirt and jeans. He was very thin, between the ages of 40 to 50, and had no police gear with him. "Well, I can call 911 and have you arrested," he said. "I had right of way," I told him, "since my light was green, and I'm gonna need to see some ID." I'm proud to say that I, despite being a short girl, was decidedly unfriendly. "I am absolutely not trying to get scammed on my way to work, bud." He gave me a look like, "Wow, I can't believe this idiot is asking me for ID." "Listen, I'm undercover. I'm with the feds." So in the span of 30 seconds, he's risen from a member of the Houston PD to an undercover federal agent. "Right. I'm gonna need to see some ID. I'm undercover. My life and operation will be at risk if you don't comply. Your life is in danger. There are people watching me right now." I stared back at him unimpressed. My mother has told me multiple times, ever since I was a baby, I've been able to communicate with a single expression how little I care for the lives of others. I was giving him that look, the one that says, "Why does a simple ant think he has the right to speak to me?" "I'm going to need some ID and insurance," I insisted. Now, having apparently given up, he noticed that my purse was on the passenger seat. Keep in mind he's leaning through the passenger door, which I had foolishly unlocked for him. Having thought this was going to be a normal car accident, he reached for it now, grabbing the canvas of the bag as opposed to the leather handle. "I'm gonna need this," he began, but I interrupted, grabbing my purse in a death grip. I may be small, but my grip is about the same strength as a pit bull, and there's no way I was gonna let him hit my car and then have the audacity to steal my purse. "No, you don't," Yes, I need to see ID so that I can report you. I don't even remember what bogus lies he told me. He was rambling at this point. He told me something about pretending to be a pimp. He needed me to pretend to give him money. His family was at risk. I don't know. At one point, he almost looked close to tears, which frankly was a bit much. There is absolutely no reason you need my purse, and you will not be getting it. You can't have it. If you're a federal agent, give me ID. I was gripping my purse so firmly my fingers were turning white from pressure. I kept glancing at where my cell phone was in the cup holder, but I didn't think I'd be quick enough to grab it and dial for the real police before he took it. He didn't ever try to jerk it from my grip, which is probably good because I would have straight up lost it to him. My car was still on and still drivable, and I'm not even joking when I say that I would have run his dumb ass down. He finally let go. Fine, let's meet at the nearest gas station. The one across the street? I asked. No, the one down the road. Can I trust you to meet me there? Yes, of course, I lied unconvincingly. I'm a good liar, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't even trying to act like I was going to meet him. I just wanted him to get out of my car. I was already thinking of the damages and how much it would cost, and if he wanted to take what little money I had, he would have to pry it from my cold, Mortis-rigged fingers one by one, because I would never let him have it. Okay, I'll meet you at the gas station down the road. Can I trust you not to go to the police? He said. Yeah, fine. He finally left, entered his vehicle and started it up. He tried to have me go first, but I was having none of it, and I gestured him, and he gestured me, and I was still wearing that absolute deadpan face. I was already on the phone with the police when he turned down the street that led to the gas station, and I obviously passed him and drove straight to the nearest police station, as the operator advised me. I actually wasn't scared during this process. I'm someone who tends to get unnaturally calm during a crisis, but I was completely calm while making the statement with the police not 20 minutes later. But of course, as soon as I walk out the police station, I just broke down sobbing. I wouldn't say this is the scariest thing that's ever happened to me, but it was scary because I'd recently moved to Houston, and all my family and extended family lives in Washington state, so I felt alone. I live with my aunt and cousin, but I have 3 siblings and 15 cousins and 17 aunts and uncles and a whole host of extended family in Washington, and I never realized how safe I felt in my small town until I was almost robbed in the big city. Also, since I'm paranoid and listen to a lot of true crime media, I parked my car a few streets over from my house and walked home. He had mentioned something about me living in the neighborhood that was within walking distance of the car accident, as well as trying to convince me I knew him somehow, which was strange. And also stupid, as I legitimately don't know anyone in Houston. In any case, I'm grateful that nothing more happened with this incident. Thank you for listening, and beware of dumb drivers that hit you with your car and then try to take things from you. Remember, you can always ask a cop for ID, and do not let anyone take anything from you without there being good reason for it. When I was a sophomore in high school, a friend would drive me home. One day we went to a record store with 2 other friends, and on the way back to drop me off, this guy in a truck passed us, narrowly missing our car in oncoming traffic, and we decided it'd be fun to follow him for a bit. So he turns onto another road shortly after and immediately pulls up to a mailbox and starts retrieving his mail. As we pass him, all 4 of us flip him off out the window and continue driving down the road. About half a mile later, we see the same vehicle driving insanely fast behind us. He tailgates us for a bit, and we start to panic a little. We start to slow down for a stop sign, and the guy whips around and cuts us off, slamming on his brakes in front of us. We wait for the moment, and he steps out of his car with a crowbar. We drive around him, but there's a stop sign in front of us we had to briefly pause at. The guy runs towards my door and grabs it when my friend takes off. We're flying down the road hoping to lose him. We make another turn onto a really busy street and think we've lost him, and we turn again and drive normally for a few miles. At this point, we're convinced we're safe. We pull up to another intersection and are waiting in the right turn lane. We look behind us, and 2 or 3 cars away is the same dude, in the turning lane flashing his headlights on and off. We make our turn and speed down the road, but so does the other guy. He speeds around us and slams on his brakes, forcing us to stop. We try and go around him, but he keeps maneuvering, so we can't do that. Eventually we stop and I say something stupid like, maybe he just wants to talk to us. So he's straddling both lanes of the road, gets out of his car with his crowbar in hand and a terrifying look on his face. My friend drives off the road, gets around the dude, and we speed away. Of course, he does the same and is driving like a maniac, but so are we, and we maintain a bit of lead on him. We make another turn and there's a school bus in front of us, just about to stop. We speed around it just in time for the bus's stop sign to extend, and for some reason the dude actually stops behind it and we speed off. We were close to another friend's house, so we pull into their driveway and into the open garage. We're all terrified at this point, so we run inside and watch out the window for this guy. He drives past the house, but thank goodness we were parked in the garage so he didn't see the car. Moral of the story? Don't mess with people. They may be crazy. My friend and I decided to go on a late night drive to find this creepy cemetery one night. Great start to a story, I know, but we were bored and in a small town with nothing else to do. After about 40 minutes of driving, we got to the state park. Now, typically, parks are closed after dark, but these roads were still public access, so they weren't off limits to general drivers. However, we were the only ones on the road at this point, and it was isolated, we thought. The lanes were surrounded by thick trees and it was dark. No street lights, kind of dark. We were on a narrow dirt lane looking for this cemetery, but we drive by it unknowingly. The area we were driving through was kind of like a square of roads with only one way in and out. We get to the crossroads, where the road we are on goes straight through, or you can continue back through by a left turn only. Next to the ditch across the road from us, we see a dark green sedan pull into the brush. No lights on, no people around, not an accident from all we could tell. Whatever, kind of weird. But we slowly turn left and begin the loop back around looking for the small rows of old headstones again. As we get back around to the intersection about 5 minutes away, the green sedan is still pulled off in the bushes, but now it's not only the vehicle there. There's a big pickup truck idling in the dark across from us, blocking the straightaway. Now, it had to have come from the other direction since no cars passed us or were in front or behind us. That was the way we had planned to go, to leave the park since we hadn't found what we had been looking for, but we couldn't pass through. This truck was in the middle of the road, taking up all the space on either side. At first, we were thinking this guy probably got his car stuck and called for help. Then, this truck guy turns on his headlights, actually his high beams, and begins revving his engine hard. My friend and I exchange looks, like, wonder who's overcompensating for something. And when we turn back, trying to see through the blinding lights, we see a silhouette of a big, bulky man standing in front of the truck, hands on hips, just standing there. We aren't but a car's length and a half away from this guy, and there's nowhere left to go, which we know just leads us back around to the same place. We sit there staring at each other for a few moments, trying to decide what to do. My friend starts pulling the car forward at snail pace, trying to keep as much distance between us and this truck as possible, and we make it turn left. He's just standing there, not moving, just looking in our direction. We weren't scared yet, really, but I'm a bit paranoid generally, so I was waiting for him to lunge at the car, throw something at us or something. I don't know. It just really felt off. After we turn, I check the rear view and see the guy holding something as he takes a few steps behind our car in the outline of the light. It's long, barrel-shaped, and threatening looking. We peel out of there now, wanting to put distance between us, but forgetting we are stuck in this square of roads. When we get back to about halfway between the start of the straightaway and the truck, whose headlights we can still see, we pull off to the side of the road, trying to figure out how to get out of this situation. I look out the window and see that we are sitting right next to the cemetery we had been looking for, but we are both too freaked out to get out, and we laugh at the irony for a second. Then we see headlights coming from behind us. Oh crap. It's the guy, we think. As it gets closer, we see it's a white SUV, and it slows next to our car. The windows roll down, and it's a car full of guys our age. "What are you guys up to out here?" the driver says. We say that we're just out for a drive, and they say some things we can't hear to each other. My friends and I don't have a strong menacing aura, so we hoped we could just send some chill vibes and have them leave us off the hook for whatever was going on. Were they in with the truck guy? 'Cause this wasn't truck guy, but this just all seemed too weird. We asked if they'd seen a truck up ahead, where they had driven by, but they said that they hadn't. When we looked back, we noticed the lights coming from the oncoming direction were gone. They laughed and pulled away slowly, telling us to have a good night, and we pulled back onto the road to take off for the exit, only looking out the windows for long enough to notice that the sedan was still there. We made it back to his parents' house without further incident and told them about this strange encounter, but couldn't really explain what had happened. It still sounds kind of stupid when I talk about it, but something was going on. Still, it could have just been a guy out fixing a car late at night, but why the aggressive behavior? And who were the people in the SUV? And why did they suddenly appear? I'm just glad nothing worse happened. I avoid state parks at night, but my friend, he's still a maniac camping in the woods alone, and he's seen some stuff. My best friend and I went to see Star Wars Episode 7 with her cute brother. They were super close, and eventually we got to all hanging out as much as we could. We were all dressed up tastefully as grown adults. My bestie toted a Jedi look, her brother pulled off a solid Han Solo, and I pulled off a close and well done Rey, minus the hair. None of us broke bank. We went to the theatre and had a blast. It was the first or second night of showing, so it was slammed, and we probably got out just before midnight. I carpooled back to my bestie's apartment where I took my car to go home, as I live about 20 minutes from her place. It was about 1:15 midnight when it happened. I was about 5 minutes from her house when, within a split second of registering, a white blob came from nowhere and slammed into my windshield. Whatever it was splashed across the entire windshield because it was so large. For some reason the lights were off for that section of the street, the only real lighting offered by the vibrant gas station lighting a minute back. Shaken up, I couldn't see through my windshield, but I was afraid to stop, and I couldn't see to turn around and get to the well-lit gas station. The best option I had was to crawl slowly and prayed I hit nothing. I was coming up to a cement median, so I used that as a guide through my driver window. The windshield wiped enough after a solid minute or two of running the wipers continuously. I hit the red stoplight at the end of the strip, where I promptly texted my bestie that I'd been hit by something that impacted my vision, where she promptly offered to send her brother right away. The white stuff was cleared off my windshield significantly better, so I was okay driving home. Because of where I was and the fact the light was out, there were no cameras. I didn't think of calling the police, or that it could have done any good. When the blob came out of nowhere, I couldn't remember if I was by any vehicles or not. I was so tired from spending the day with them and getting out of that movie late, to where I still don't know half of what happened. I know it took a few weeks for some of those spots to wash off the glass. I told my mum in the morning, who freaked out and told me that I should have called the cops. Apparently, when the windshield fluid was cleaning the white stuff off my window, it actually made it worse. This was an ongoing trend for gang initiations, to do things like this to victims. I called them and logged a report, and roughly when it happened, but never heard from them again. Another tactic was laced paper with narcotics that make you pass out from touching it. In any case, I learnt my lesson. Always call the police when something weird happens to you. Oh, and if you get hit with white stuff, do not use the windshield fluid on it. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed tonight's video. It was a fun one. The fire one especially got to me. That is really dangerous. Anyway, I hope that you are all well. And if you like the video, you know what to do. As always, a huge thanks to my lovely patrons whose names are on screen now. And if you're interested in becoming a patron and joining and getting cool perks for doing that, feel free to check out the link in the description. And if you've got a scary story of something that's happened to you, you can also find the link in the description to send it to me. That's all you need to do. Has anyone else been watching Avatar: The Last Airbender? Me and my wife have been plowing through it, and we're now on the 3rd season. I really like it. Brings me back to my childhood. She never watched it, so it's good that she gets to see it. And it's all fresh for her. If you've never seen it, I recommend it. It is really, really good. On Netflix, by the way. And then obviously there's Legend of Korra, which I've only seen 1 season of, so that'll be fresh for me as well, and fun. I'm going to leave it there now, guys. I wish you all well, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.